Xin chào mọi người đã quay trở lại với talk show của Advertising Việt Nam và tôi là NNhưng. Thì trong cái talk show ngày hôm nay chúng ta sẽ cùng tìm hiểu một chủ đề rất là mới và thực ra đang là trending topic hiện nay, đó là về AI và đặc biệt hơn là trong ngành truyền thông PR. Thì những nhân sự trong ngành truyền thông PR cần làm gì để mà có thể sử dụng cái công nghệ AI nó một cách hiệu quả nhất và chúng ta cần trang bị những kiến thức gì? Thì hai khách mời ngày hôm nay của chúng ta sẽ cùng nhau thảo luận về cái vấn đề trên ha.
So welcome Mr. Lars Verdish and Peja Gupta for joining the Advertising Vietnam talk show today.
I think that before we start, okay, just to introduce yourself a little bit with the Advertising Vietnam audience.
Yeah, first of all, thanks so much for having us. Hi everybody out there. My name is Lars. I'm originally from Germany, but over 20 years in Asia already. And we started Precious 11 years ago, really by looking into what's happening in Southeast Asia. We started out of Singapore, now we're in over 7 countries, and this week in Vietnam, and had our first foray here over the last years, because more and more of our clients of international brands are looking at this market. At the same time, we're working with a lot of clients that want to grow in other parts of Greater Asia. And even beyond. That's why we have some of our clients that got listed at NASDAQ, so we do some of the investor relations communications, we're looking at reputation management, and at the end of the day, it's like, how can you reach the audience, the right channel, the right format, the right stories, the right angles?
And my name is Prayak, and like Lars, also not from Singapore, but based in Singapore. I've spent close to 20 years in Singapore, but originally from India. And at Precious, what we're trying to do is build a truly international brand. And my role is to help drive marketing, sales, as well as run some of the teams. And our focus is always being one of the top 100 agencies in the world, right? And so we're well on the way after a strong last year, and hopefully this year we can make it.
Yeah, it's inspiring to see how like Vietnam is growing, right? The vibe on the road. Yeah. In the industry, in our industry, in advertising, in PR, and communications, and how, and I'm sure you know that better than us, you always have to innovate, you have to think about what's next, because what worked 10 years ago or even last year might be obsolete with the next tool out there, with the next platform, with the next social media, or the next app on our phones.
Okay. Maybe you can heard about the ChatGPT, like we had a lot of big attention over the last few months. So specialize for ChatGPT in like PR, because that's your expertise right now. So how do you utilize the ChatGPT and what the experience look like?
Well, I think right now it's still a discovery part, right? So you're thinking, where can you use it or not? So I think the use cases where we apply it is research, discovery, right? Give me, it's using like Google search on steroids. That's one use case. When we get a new client or a new topic and you need a quick summary, that's a great kind of research tool. But then also if you need writing, and I used it for, Lars, can you give me a quick statement on this topic or that topic? Or even for PowerPoints, I've used it to do internal trainings on managing client expectations. Yeah. So there's so many different use cases, but it's all really thinking about where does it make sense. It's like, you know, a hammer is a great tool. Yeah. If you have nails. It's not so great to cut wood in parts, right? So you really have to figure out where it's the right use, and where it's also where the limitations. If you just some of the statistics are some of the tools, without calling them out, they claim of over 70% of false information. Yeah. So you have to really look at it too. It's like, I compared like picking one book out of the library and believing that's the ultimate truth. It's not, right? Yeah. So you have to do your fact checking. It's really like, it's an editorial tool. It's not necessarily good to have original thought leadership. And yeah, be sure that the facts are right.
How about with the Peja, for what you great about usefulness of the ChatGPT for your work?
Yeah, I mean, there's many different AI tools. So from our conversations with business partners in Vietnam, we hear Notion, for instance, is more popular. And of course, in Singapore, we are quite big on ChatGPT. We believe these tools will only continue to get more sophisticated and smarter. And so it's important that you utilize it in your work. end of the day, it's only as good as the content churned from the questions you ask it, right? It's good for content creation, but one of the learnings that we have is the best writers aren't the best communicators, right? Just because you can write really well doesn't mean you can connect to audiences. When you think of the best communicators, you think of people like Oprah Winfrey that really talk to you and connect with you, right? It's building that relationship. We don't believe AI can necessarily do the relationship component, which is very important to what we do for our clients, and but it's very important for content creation. It's good quality content, and I believe every person in at least public relations or in a text-based writing job should be using it.
Okay, based on my experience when I use ChatGPT, I think that the most challenging for people not asking the right question.
Absolutely, right? And I think that's also something that we're discussing internally. You have to be smart about the right questions. That's the discovery path. It's again a little bit like going to the library, starting with one book and then the reference to the other book. And then you start, that makes sense, that doesn't make sense. And then you go down that path or that path, right? And I mean, that's also like the beauty about finding out new things. Where it gets tricky is if you look at it from a more scientific approach. Can you replicate the same answer if you ask the same question? And that's not always the case. And then I get always very suspicious, right? When you can't, we did that, who are the top PR firms in Asia? And depending how you ask, Precious Communications is top 3 or doesn't appear at all. So you can manipulate also by your search history. You can say, oh, can you do this and include that brand? So it's also a tool like anything else that can manipulate. And that's where we have to be, as storytellers, look at how we apply ethical thought into how we apply any kind of story, right? What's our responsibility as truthful storytellers?
Okay, ChatGPT is just one of the tools for a bunch of tools for the AI. It's like text to image, like even text to like PowerPoint as well, text to Excel, or even you request an AI to writing like SQL script or even Python as well for using the tool daily task of PR and communication as well. So how would you access the emerging trend of AI tool and use for your daily working as well?
There are so many different applications that are possible, right? One is if you want to, what you said about Python. So if you are a developer, you have to learn less and less coding. It's about what do you want in AI to help you code? What's the outcome? So even engineering becomes different, right? So you have to ask with the end in mind. So coding becomes easier. Image creation, so we use it for mood boards. So when we conceptualize campaigns, if you played around with it, humans don't always look very human with some of the tools. If they have more or less than 5 fingers, something is wrong. But you know, it's great marketing applications. Like the Barbie movies coming out, and everybody can turn into a Barbie or Ken, right? I think a lot of people have played around with that. So they're great applications for brands. Or a very famous ketchup brand, actually, like how should ketchup look like? In Australia, a campaign, and they used it because the most famous ketchup is a certain brand, and it came out always that, right? So you can also back engineer that one. But you also see it's used for fakes, Trump getting arrested or not, or the Pope wearing a rapper's jacket, right? So we have to be very careful to not believe everything in visual or in writing. So with all the opportunities to quickly turn around content, to have crazy ideas come to life in seconds, we also have to be very careful that we consume content with always a little bit of suspicious mind.
Okay, so how about Mr. Paya? Specialize in like PR and communication as well.
Yeah, I truly believe that if technology is not making your job, your life, or your employee experience better, then it's just noise, right? So it has to really complement what you're doing and help you deliver a better experience for your clients. If it's not making your life easier, then I don't think you necessarily need it. My concern is actually from a point of accountability, because you can't hold AI responsible for outcomes. Is always a person. And so when you think about it more and more, we talked about the Pope in a jacket. We talked about deep fakes, we talked about, and if people, and we are just recovering from fake news. So if people believe these things are true when they're not true, right? I think you have a responsibility to put content that's authentic. And a lot of people will use it for black marketing or unethical purposes, and that is where it could become a legitimate concern.
While there is like many benefits for in the behind communication as well, using advantages of the AI tool, but I believe there's some tasks or there's some cases like we cannot replace the human touch or the human like point of view when using that AI tool. So how can like we like utilize an AI tool to compare with between the human and AI and support our work as well, even like company?
If you think about generally, tools should make things easier and faster.
Yeah.
So especially for social media campaigns, you can on the spot, on the fly, create images and copy and headlines for an audience of one. If I know your background, I can easily on the fly create an ad or a communication or a message that works for you. So it's a fast volume customizing tool. That's fantastic. You can't do that with humans, right? Where humans usually come in is having that original thought, because tools normally reconfigure what has been said. So if you want to have a real opinion, not very good to have an AI do that for you, right? But you could argue not every thought leader that claims to be that is actually a thought leader. A lot of brands in the past were playing really, really safe, right? Yeah. And that's, I think, the differentiation. The more AI is used to create noise and volume, the more valuable it will become to advise clients to really have an opinion, to create perspective, to be original. Because that's something that tools are not really good at, right? And that's what we advise also our clients, to not just follow every trend. Not everybody has to be on blockchain, not everybody has to be using AI. It's really about how does it help your company, how does it help your brand, and also what are the risks, right?
How about BjourdNG? What is your like you using AI tool in your company, or the like employees, the manager, then using the advantages of AI, and how you can make sure that okay they can balance between AI and humans?
Absolutely. I think content creation is an important part of our jobs. Quite a bit of our time is spent to create content, and if that simplifies the process, it really does help us to do more with our time, right? But it's not the only thing that we do. We are very focused on helping clients with building relationships with, whether it's with journalists, whether it's directly with investors, whether it's with regulators, really helping them to get this content to the right audiences. And I think that is not something AI can do yet. Okay. Our other concern is around ethics, right? Because not everything out there might be the truth. There's a famous statistic, there's a famous data point about when they compared the human attention span with a goldfish. Apparently it's 8 seconds, and you know, it's a very popular statistic, but then they realized that they couldn't actually identify where the statistic is from. And more with a lot of the AI tools, it seems, you know, quite a significant percentage of the research doesn't have an attributable source. And that actually raises a lot of red flags currently. So with that in mind, right, as when you represent especially a client or a brand, you want to make sure that you're putting out the right messages. You want to make sure that it's the truth and it's not just, you know, something that's not, because there's a significant risk for a brand's reputation if it's not true.
Okay, did you inform client when you're using AI to create the network? Just okay, I have to inform the client because that maybe that they think, okay, I need this company when they're using AI as well.
Right now, we don't use AI to wholesale produce and just sell it, right?
Okay.
It's part of a research process internally on optimization part. But that's actually a good point, and we're looking into how can we set guidelines for us and be transparent to our clients where we use it, how we use it, right?
Yeah, okay.
And I think that's also kind of us as an industry where we have to think about how transparent do we have to be, right? Because otherwise we could just all at the end of the day end up with the same content from the same source.
Yeah.
And we can't claim ownership, right? And that's, again, it's a big issue of copyright or intellectual property. So we can't claim if we don't have that. So we look at ourselves more as not just content producers in volume, but at the end of the day, our job is to help clients to create business impact.
Yeah, okay.
And then how we get from, this is your business objective, this is the audience, how we go down there are many tools and layers, right? But an AI can't have that briefing conversation with a CEO. It can't replace a CEO thinking about what we want to achieve in 5 years in Vietnam is that. Our target audience will be from the north.
Yeah.
Our target audience will be 25 years old, right? So that's our job as consultants is more like translating and finding the right steps and the right tools on that way. So for us, it's less a discussion about will our jobs be replaced.
Yeah.
It's more like how can we be smart in that approach of helping clients achieve business results.
Okay. So Vietnam PR market are rapidly developing. So as a global agency in PR, so how can you like using your advantages in global market and when you apply to Vietnam, even like the team management and your expertise? So first my question, like you say that your company like 10 years, and this is the first time you enter in Vietnam?
Now, I've been in Vietnam, I think 4 times before. We're looking into what do our clients want.
Yeah.
We're looking at greater Southeast Asia. We've done events in Vietnam for the last 8 years.
Oh, okay, 8 years.
But now it becomes more and more common that global or regional brands want us to help them on the ground, right? So our first hire in Vietnam is a year ago, but our expertise here is already 8 years, right?
Oh.
And our approach is really like, number one, what are the kind of international global standards in PR that goes beyond just transactional, I need 5 pieces of coverage tomorrow, versus how can we help a brand to achieve an objective, right? Is it top funnel brand awareness, or is it message penetration? Is it reputation building or defense? How can I create trust in my brand locally? How can I build relationships with journalists instead of just making it, you give me this, I give you that, right? Yeah. It's really about looking, again, 5 steps back, what's in it for the business in the long run. I think that's what we're doing. The other part is then really about building relations and bridges, right? We are looking really at brands that want to do multi-market, where Vietnam is one big place, at the same time is looking at Vietnamese heroes, unicorns that want to be successful on a regional or global level. That's what we've done with companies in Southeast Asia, including helping them to go to NASDAQ, right? Where you have an investor relations play, where you need to look for banking licenses in Indonesia. So it's really, it's a more a business conversation, and how can communications help on the journey?
Yeah. So at a global communication agency, so how can you evaluate like global expertise in Vietnam? Because that you just like, okay, hiring someone in Vietnam like years ago, of course you work in Vietnam industry like 8 years well, but I think that global expertise still the most important, like you are running the campaign for your client in Vietnam market. So, okay.
And that's exactly where we're looking into how can we combine the best of multiple worlds and perspectives, right? There are a lot of great communicators, PR people, advertisers, brand owners in Vietnam. And that's why we need partners. That's why we have these kind of conversations to learn, right? I think too many brands globally try to be they were just very arrogant in entering a market. We are not like that, right? We're really looking into how can we help? And also where are we not the best experts? And that's fine, right? We need to have, with the clients we work, we have to have a trust established by how can we work together. We never work with clients where we're just executing, but also it's not our job to tell clients what to do. It's as a consultant, we advise and discuss openly what are different options. In Vietnam, what works here might not work in the Philippines. What works in Indonesia might not work in Vietnam. What might work in Ho Chi Minh City might not be the right approach for Saigon, right? So it's really about having discussions on expertise and advising what would work or not, right? Especially in the venture capital or startup place, we see a lot of movement, and that's where we become not just experts on communications, but connecting people with the ecosystem.
Our biggest advice to any client is to always localize and customize for the market. Yeah. So your business model that maybe worked in Japan, Korea, the US, or Europe might not be applicable in Vietnam, right? So it's always about understanding how things work here and then connecting people. So even our team here, they have over 10 years experience in media relations, but then when they apply the precious way of doing things, they tell us that they're experiencing new things. They didn't believe that it could have worked before. And clients appreciate that the counsel they're giving because they're implementing some very international best practices.
So in Vietnam market, so there is a significant growth in terms of like the market size and the people as well. So what are your advice for the international businesses who want to enter in Vietnam or have a plan to enter in Vietnam? What are your advice for them?
One is it's about really getting to know people.
Yeah.
There's not one Vietnam. There are so many different facets, different people, different regions, right? It's really understanding what's in it for your audience, right? And I think we've seen that just having a business model that worked somewhere else and pushing that or a brand in here wouldn't work. I believe, especially Vietnam, is about building relationships, going in for the long run, right? I think too many brands are very impatient. They want to have quick wins, but that can be very costly in the long run. So we help clients with advisory in terms of what we believe are steps. So it's a process. You don't just land and expand. You do one step at a time. Find the right partners. Learn from others. Learn from others' mistakes is normally the best part. You don't have to do all the mistakes yourself, right? Be patient. It's very hard for brands that have business objectives to move fast, and everybody's getting excited about the fast growth of the economy, the very young population, about the high education levels, the penetration of smartphones and internet. But we've seen that in other markets. You have to find the right ecosystem, right? It's like you need a village to raise a child. It's the same like you need an ecosystem to make a brand successful. And that's what we're looking at as well. Connecting our clients with the right partners, with the right audiences, helping them to understand and learn and then adapt, because it has to be relevant for the right audience. Yeah. Otherwise, it's always the question like, why does somebody need you?
Okay. Thank you, Lars. So how about Peja? Do you have any like input for the answer from Parag?
Sure. You know, we've been on the ground, experienced the energy, the excitement. People truly want to collaborate in Vietnam. And so what we truly believe is we would love for more brands to give us the opportunity to help tell their story in Vietnam, international brands, because it is the place to be right now.
And the other way around, right? There's so many great brands, business, entrepreneurs in Vietnam, and we want to help them to bring their story to the regional or even global market.
Exactly.
I'm very appreciated your coming today for the talk show of advertising Vietnam, and I have a grateful, useful information you guys sharing about your company working in Vietnam and helping the business, even Vietnam and global, read the news that. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We're very appreciative of working with great partners like you and Advertising Vietnam, and hope to have more options to collaborate. And thanks everybody out there.